Imagine your child destroys something deeply precious to you by accident. What do? Do you yell? Do you punish? Do you make them fix it? Maybe something completely different? Well, in today's episode, I am sharing a personal story exactly about this topic. It's about how I handled this situation in my home and why I believe that our home is genuinely a better place to be because of it. You might be surprised by my reaction, I don't know, but it's all a part of emotionally intelligent parenting and creating a punishment-free zone in our home where mistakes are not something bad, not something to hide or be ashamed of, but mistakes become this opportunity for learning and actually connection. So if you're curious about what I am talking about and how this all works, then stay tuned because that's basically today's story. It's just a solo episode from me. So firstly, I want to say welcome to the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. If you haven't been on here before, then a double extra huge welcome and a hug because it's so exciting that you found this podcast and I hope you really enjoy it. I'm Stephanie Pinto. I'm a mum of 2 kids. I'm here in Sydney, Australia, and I'm a best-selling author and international speaker, obviously a podcast host, and an emotional intelligence coach as well. So I'm really passionate about helping parents just like you to raise emotionally resilient and confident kids. I just want to be clear though, this does not mean we are like perfect in our home. And like any family, we have our share of big emotions, all 4 of us. But to be honest, meltdowns are rare. And instead of everything turning to chaos and hitting the fan, so to speak, we usually turn to tools like listening, conflict resolution, problem solving, communication, and of course, emotional intelligence. And our home has really become a peaceful and punishment-free zone. I said we're going to talk about that today, and everyone's emotions are understood, respected. Doesn't always go down peachy perfect, but we get what is going on and we give each other space when those emotions are coming up. This journey, I think, has really only been possible because we've learned how to manage our own emotions as parents, and we're helping our kids actively and like explicitly learn how to manage theirs as well. So most of the time we face our parenting challenges together, mostly calmly and with mutual respect. I say mostly because of course we're human and we have our moments where like it just all turns messy, but then we get back on track. And I am here to help you do the same. I want to acknowledge the Darug Nation as well, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders and ancestors. And I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. I'm going to share a story with you guys from my own home, one where one of our kids unfortunately damaged something that was kind of special to me, something that I had actually made myself. And it only happened really within the last couple of weeks. So it's fresh, and I reflected on it afterwards, and I thought, you know what, this is actually a really powerful experience for me to share because I know a few years ago I would have reacted very differently. My child who damaged the thing would have, I think, responded really differently and not come to me the way that they did and be honest. And I think this really just shows the power of emotionally intelligent parenting, the value behind the way in which we raise our kids. Not that it is perfect. I often say that because I don't want people to think, oh, you know, everything runs so smoothly and our family is, you know, happy chappy all the time. We still have our human moments, but I am seeing, and my husband is seeing, the impacts of the way in which we raise our kids on them and on us as a whole. So I'm actually going to challenge some of the very common assumptions and reactions that people have when I say things like, we have a punishment-free home. I know that people often think, oh, so your kids get away with anything and they rule the roost and they walk all over you. They must get away with murder. And I'm like, whoa. Like, let's set the record straight. So I want to talk a little bit about that. If you guys have caught any of the episodes before or followed me on the social media places, then you know I'm a huge nerd in terms of the research, and I always like to lean back on this is what the science shows us. This is what our ability to now look at huge numbers of families and kids and track them over time and see what works, what the benefits are and what doesn't work. And I'm also going to talk about punishment as well. Because I know in some families, in some cultures, in some parts of the world, punishment and these kind of having really harsh or punitive consequences for kids is still really, really commonplace. So we'll kind of talk a bit about differences between discipline versus punishment. So I think that's going to be really helpful, and I think really insightful, just to make you think and reflect and think how, what are we doing and how am I seeing my kids' behavior and how do I typically respond. To start with, as I said, this happened a few weeks ago, so it is still fresh. I want to actually show you guys and explain what happened. One of my kids came to me one afternoon and they said, "Mummy, you're going to be angry at me." So first off, like, very rarely do we get angry and erupt at our kids. Like, I really can't remember the last time that we exploded, right? But isn't it interesting that my child still said, "Mummy, you're going to be angry at me"? So that's something I want to point out. I feel like I'm just going to park the story. I haven't even told you guys what happened. But kids see us as their idols, I want to say, as the people that they love the most in their heart. They don't know it. They're like they unconsciously know that they're dependent on us for love and connection and belonging and food and shelter and everything like that. But we are the biggest person in their lives. And so it does not feel nice. It feels awful to disappoint or let someone down or hurt them, right? So it didn't surprise me that my child said, "Oh, Mummy, I think you're going to be angry," because even though, past me would have probably said, "What do you mean I'm going to get angry? I never yell at you. Like, you're allowed to make mistakes. That's okay in our family." But this time I was just like, "Oh, I get it. You're feeling," like the feeling or the emotion behind those words are, "Oh no, I'm really upset that I've probably disappointed you or I've, damaged something," which is what they did. So I was like, "That's okay. Tell me what happened, or do you want to show me?" Or I can't even remember the exact words I said. But then my child went to get something from the hallway, and I'm gonna hold it up to show you guys who are watching on YouTube. But for those of you who are listening on the podcast, I'm going to describe it to you. Here it is. So this is a painting that I had done at one of those paint and sip evenings with my friend. And it's a painting of my dog who passed away about not quite 18 months ago. Her name's Pepper. She was a beautiful black and white border collie cross German shepherd. So, oh my goodness. And there are 3 pretty big lines of green ink splashed right across the top half of the painting. They're very noticeable. Like, this is up close. And there are some spots of ink as well on her face and on her eyes and stuff like that. So this is like bright green ink on the black dog. So it's noticeable. So my child brought it over and showed me, and actually we hadn't put it up. It was sitting in the hallway, like on the floor. I just haven't, pinned it up yet. And my child said, "Mummy, I think it was the ink, like the gel pens. I was playing with it and it kind of exploded, like the ink came out." And so I just want to pause there and notice, like, with you guys, they felt so uncomfortable and so upset and so bad. I just want to say bad, like guilty, that they had damaged, obviously, that painting, because they knew that I'd made it and we loved it and it was our Pepper, I'm also trying to be really careful, if you haven't noticed, that I don't want to throw my kids under the bus. I know I talk about them on the podcast a fair bit and I tell stories, but I'm very conscious that one day, if not now, my kids are old enough to hear what I record and what I post about and things like that. So I have to be careful to kind of honor and respect their privacy. So I'm trying to kind of say their rather than his or her, because I have one of each. So I'm hoping that I don't slip up, but we'll see. I'm just being completely honest with you guys. So they came to me, and this is the other thing, they were honest, right? So I could have found out a week later and been like, "Who did this?" Or, I probably would have been like that, but I would have been like, "Guys, what is this?" Both of my kids, I think they don't feel necessarily like threatened or scared of our reactions. I know my child said, "Mummy, you're going to be angry, or you're going to be mad," whatever they said. But I think that's almost like an automatic reaction. They just feel that guilt. So what I did was I acknowledged the mistake, and I wasn't angry. I was like, "Oh man, that is really special, and that really sucks." I think I said something like, "I get it. I get you didn't mean to do that, but it's disappointing. I wonder if we can fix it. I wonder if there's a way we can get rid of the ink or wipe it off or scratch it off. I don't really know." As you can see, that was a couple of weeks ago. Still haven't got around to it. But yeah, at the time that I thought to myself, there's no point in erupting and blaming and shaming and punishing my child, because they already know that that's the wrong thing to, that was bad or that was wrong. They don't need to learn any more than what they already know, which is we don't damage things that are meaningful or belongings, right? Other people's belongings. They know that. So when parents go, "Oh, but aren't they learning to get away with it? Shouldn't they be punished so that they learn not to damage other people's things?" I'm like, no, they already know. Both my kids already know not to punish, not to damage other people's belongings. They know not to ruin things. They know not to draw on each other's, walls or books. Kids learn that very early on, and I stand by that. They know what's right and wrong. And the reason why kids often do, quote unquote, the wrong thing, and they do damage things on purpose or intentionally, or hurt one another, is because of the lack of brain development that they ordinarily have, right? 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15, I don't care. Their brain is still under construction. They know not to do that thing, or they know they should be really careful. My son once spilt Fanta on the couch, and I have spilt coffee on the rug. We make mistakes, and I know not to. I don't need teaching how to be better or more careful, because I'm already as careful as I can be in the moment, and sometimes I'm just not careful enough. I get that a lot of parents really believe that punishment is necessary to teach kids right from wrong, but I promise you they already know. Unless they're in a new situation where they're at, a new experience, a new situation, a new place, a new environment, or doing a new activity like a new sport, and they don't realize you can't run with a ball and it's basketball. I don't know. There are times when kids need to learn what's right and what's wrong, what's okay and what's not, what's appropriate and what isn't. But once they've learned that, they know. I want to say they don't need to be taught anymore, but they need to be reminded, right? Because it's the impulse control, or the they have forgotten. They go, "Oh yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Oh yeah, whoops." Right? I have done that. So I really want to challenge that belief for everyone, and kind of clarify that punishment-free, our home is a punishment-free zone, as I said. That doesn't mean we don't teach our kids or help them to learn the impact of their behavior on other people, or the impacts of their words, or when they do cause and effect, logic. If you do that, then he's going to do this, so of course that will happen. These steps that happen when we make certain choices. I'm teaching my kids that stuff all the time. That is not about punishment. You guys might remember from maybe a previous episode that I talked a bit about discipline versus punishment. Punishment is you've done that thing wrong. You've done something wrong, so I'm going to make you suffer and feel really bad. Or I'm going to take something that you love. Discipline is you haven't done the right thing, or you've done something wrong, so I'm going to teach you what to do instead and why we don't do that thing. Right? So it's much more meaningful. There's so much more value in it. It's much more productive, in the long term. And it's kind of we're passing the baton on to our kids about making choices in the future and making good decisions and checking or being more aware, things like that. Punishment is just, you've done that thing. I want to make you feel really bad. I'm going to make you suffer. Get in your room, or no dessert, or no more iPad, or you're not going to that party on the weekend, or whatever it is. There's actually no teaching around the transgression, if you want to call it that. So I want to talk a little bit about the research now and what that says. There is so much research that supports compassion and emotional intelligence as best practices when our kids mess up or make a mistake or do the wrong thing. We know that punishment leads to negative outcomes, not just now in this moment or in the short term, but in the long term as well. Kids will often hide their mistakes, or they will lie to avoid punishment. it actually also can increase negative self-talk. So kids will feel ashamed. They'll be like, I'm so dumb, I'm such an idiot, how stupid, and things like that. Kids may also start to learn to fear your reaction in the future because they have almost had that imprinted, I've done something wrong and then I got yelled at and then I felt ashamed. There's also studies that show that punishment will often lead to compliance through fear. So like surface level compliance and obedience, but not to long-term learning or self-regulation. So that, I think, in itself is huge, because don't we want our kids to learn from us how to regulate their emotions, how to control their impulses, how to make good decisions, how to resolve conflict, maturely? Don't we want them to learn that stuff in the long term rather than just to do what I say? We're not going to be around forever. We're not going to be around when our kids are at school or in the playground or with friends in social situations. So we have to, like I kind of said, pass that baton on and do some teaching rather than just, when I see you've done something wrong, I'm going to make you suffer. I'm going to teach you not to do that. And that's the way it is. Like, that doesn't instill kind of any long-term self-discipline. Another thing I want to mention is that kids can often learn to avoid getting caught rather than why their behavior is actually wrong or not okay. So if our kids are experiencing, being shamed or being guilt-tripped or being yelled at and punished and things like that, they will learn, I'm not going to get caught. I will hide that picture, I will hide that painting, I will hide the broken toy and hope that so-and-so never finds it, because I don't want to deal with them pointing out that I've done the wrong thing and getting angry and getting upset with me. That's too intolerant to my brain and my heart, so I'm going to hide it and hope that I don't get caught. So almost like a huge part of me goes, isn't that teaching our kids to be dishonest? It's wild. Okay. Last thing I want to say, a few negative outcomes of using punishment. So if I had done some of these things to my child, then these could be the outcomes or the things that would happen afterwards. Number one, damage parent-child trust. Okay, so it damages that feeling of, hey, if you've done something wrong, I get it, come to me, like trust that I have got your back and I'm on your team. It kind of damages that connection, right? Like we just talked about. Second thing is it can really reinforce the idea that mistakes equals being bad, instead of mistakes are a part of learning and mistakes are going to happen and I can own it and move on, right? How many times, I don't know, I've asked parents when I've done a workshop or a presentation or something, and I'm like, who here got apologized to as a kid by your parents? 0 hands go up. That wasn't a thing. It wasn't a done thing. It was like, no, if I apologize to my kids, then I'm admitting fault and I'm not perfect. And like, I need to be the parent and the authority, the one in charge. So we have to shift that paradigm and that belief in our head that if we make mistakes, that's human, that's okay. We try not to, but we're going to do it. So when it happens, we own it and we take responsibility and we say, hey buddy, I'm really sorry I did that, or I didn't mean to do this. Let me make it up to you, right? So mistakes are part of learning, but if we're using punishments and things like that, we really are going to teach our kids that when you make a mistake, that equals you are bad, that is bad, I don't want to see it, get out of my sight, like all of those messages. The third thing is it can increase these fear-based behaviors instead of understanding consequences, or understanding when I do this, then that happens, so I have to make amends, I have to apologize, I have to see if I can make it right. So fear-based behaviors are things like erupting. It can be this fight or flight type of reaction. I didn't do it, you didn't see, she started it, that's not fair, that kind of stuff. Or it can be like the shutdown. So go inward. That was probably me as a kid. Definitely that was my go-to. Fear-based behaviors are when I'm in fear, or if I'm in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, then I have these reactive behaviors. They're unhelpful. They are sometimes damaging, and there is zero learning going on in those moments. So we're not teaching our kids anything when they're in those fear-based moments, right? The last thing is it can really prevent kids from developing these important life skills like conflict resolution, repairing relationships, and all these other relationship skills. Like I just said, like how many of us got apologized to as kids? Probably none. How many of our parents or caregivers owned their behavior, owned their mistakes, and had accountability? Very few. Like, it's so common that us as parents feel this discomfort when we have to own something with our kids, or we've made a mistake and we need to repair. Like, so many of us, me included, our go-to is like, just shove that down, just sweep it under the rug, hurry up, now get in the car. I wouldn't have to yell if you weren't being so, and so on. So I think it's really important for us to switch into, okay, when these things happen with our kids, what do I want them to learn? I can teach my child about being honest, and I can thank them for being honest and telling me. I can thank them for, showing up and owning their behavior and coming to me and saying what they did. And also about repairing or making amends or trying to make things right? What I think is really helpful when our kids do these things and they mess up, right? If we can get out of this punishment mode and into discipline, which again is teaching, like, I want my kids to learn how to solve problems, to learn how to resolve conflict, to learn how to communicate honestly and openly. So if we shift out of punishment into more problem solving and teaching, then that is like brilliant. I think that's really emotionally intelligent. I think that's really smart. I think it's great in the long term, and it removes all that blame, shame, guilt that we just don't need. It's so unhelpful in the moment. First thing is, we can have some problem solving conversations. So instead of focusing on the mistake, we could focus on how to fix it. I am still a big believer of saying how that affected us. I don't think we should be like, oh, well, that's okay. Like, no, that was important to me. I painted it with my friend, it took me a few hours. It's about dog, who we love. So I think it's okay to let kids know the impact of their actions or their behavior on other people. Could be the sibling, could be me, the parent, right? So I'm not rubbing it in. I'm not making them feel like really guilty and awful, but I'm saying, hey, yeah, oh, that is so disappointing. Or, oh man, like, I loved that, and that's a shame that happened. I did ask my child, I said, what do you think we could do to fix this? So if we can ask our kids, what can we do to make this right? How can we make it up to that person? And things like that. We can collaborate with them on some solutions. Very often our kids will actually come up with some really great ideas that we didn't think about, because they have like brilliant brains of their own sometimes. They might be able to think, oh, what would I like in this situation to happen if my brother or sister, did that to me? So focus on, okay, how can we solve the problem? How can we make it better? How can we make amends, rather than going straight to a punishment? We can also help them to kind of develop that perspective taking muscle. So, and a big part of that is empathy, right? So, or a big part of empathy is perspective taking, I should say. So we can help them to see that other person's point of view. We can also teach them how to resolve conflict. Like when there's a dispute or an argument, we can kind of help each kid or each person see the other person's side. So I also do really love, and I'm kind of going to repeat myself, teaching our kids how to make amends and repair. So my child did come and say, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to, it was the pen, and they explained what happened. We can help our child to kind of see, how can we repair the relationship, because that's valuable and that's important. How can we repair that? What are some different ways we can do it? Not through a forced apology. We don't want to just like, oh my gosh, I can't remember the last time I ever forced my kids to make an apology. And I actually tell them, if they're arguing together, I say, hey, if you're not ready yet, you do not have to apologize now. Sometimes I'll go as far as saying, because if you do, I know you're not going to mean it, and that's unhelpful. So wait, we can come back to it, or I'll come back to you, or when you feel cool enough, then I think you might need to go say something, or then you can go back to him or her and have a talk, right? So I explicitly say there's no point in doing a forced apology because that's unhelpful. It's not going to be meaningful. We want that kind of genuine action happening. I actually looked up some research on this. I just want to jump in because I forgot to mention this before. It is really natural for kids to fear disappointment from the people they love. I know I talked right about that at the start, but it is very common for kids to feel ashamed or worried about disappointing, particularly their parents, even in families where like yelling and punishments and things is not a common response. So if you think about maybe yourself and your partner, if you have one, you still feel bad about stuffing up and maybe letting them down, right? It's just, I think, this innate response, this visceral thing that we have as humans, that we don't like letting people down, especially the people we love. Okay, so one of the last things I want to say is that I just want to reinforce the message of, it is not coddling kids to give them love when they mess up or stuff up. it is not losing your authority as a parent to give them love and compassion or even affection when they mess up and make a mistake. I actually think this is very smart parenting. It is emotionally intelligent parenting, because we are teaching our kids that when you mess up or make a mistake, number one, that's human of you, and that is pretty normal to be expected, because I'm an adult and I do it too. So number two, it's not demonizing mistakes, and when you mess up, it's not encouraging kids that that's bad, so you've got to hide it. So if you ever do it, then there's something wrong with you. Like it's removing all that as well. And it is not teaching kids that making mistakes is totally fine. You don't have to make it up to the person. You don't have to clean up, the ink on the painting. All good. Like, who cares if you damage things? That is not what it is at all. You may have noticed that I didn't say, oh, well, no problems, all good, just put it back. I was like, oh, I let them know. Oh, that really sucks. I said, how could we fix this? They already felt bad. Like I didn't need to do that. But we talked about, now that thing has happened, what can we do to make it right? Maybe that's the whole takeaway. If you get nothing else from this episode, I think the takeaway is, when something bad happens, what can we do to make it right? Because that does impact another person, whether you've hurt them physically or with your words, or if you've damaged something of theirs, like the picture, there is that can hurt or upset the other person. So what can we do to make it right? I think that's probably the whole overall meaning. We want kids to learn that stuff so that when they're in friendships or relationships or romantic relationships down the track, or in the workplace, that if they stuff up, they own it. They don't get shamed for owning it. And they know the next step is, let me repair. Let me make it right. How can I make it up to you? I want to make amends because our relationship is important. So I guess to summarize, by replacing punishment with compassion, with teaching, and with problem solving, and I want to say emotional intelligence, of course, then you are fostering a home where your kids will feel safe enough to learn from their mistakes and not hide them. And by the way, they are in a much better position to later down the track come to you when they have made maybe a big mistake as a teenager or an adult. They're going to come to you because they trust that mum or dad will not make me feel awful. They will not shame me and make me feel like dirt. They always help me through these things, and they always help me how to solve the problem. Second thing is just to kind of lay it on thick and remind you guys again, this is not about being permissive. It's about raising emotionally intelligent, responsible kids who understand the impact of their actions. I actually did mention that I might talk a little bit more about the punishment, the research behind punishment, and its effects. So hang around just for maybe the next 2 to 5 minutes, because I want to read a little bit out. I got some stuff ready in preparation for this episode. I feel very organized. So number one, punishment increases the likelihood of dishonesty. So there was a study published in Developmental Science about 10 years ago, I think it was 2014. It actually found that kids who are punished for lying are more likely to lie in the future to avoid further punishment. How wild is that? The study highlighted that punishment doesn't teach kids the value of honesty, but rather encourages them to hide their behavior to escape consequences. So that blows my mind. Number one. Okay, so number two is punishment leads to fear-based compliance rather than long-term understanding. So there's research that shows that while punishment can yield short-term compliance or obedience, it does not foster long-term behavioral change. It actually creates fear of authority, and that can stifle emotional development and lead to anxiety and stress in kids. Whew. Number three is that kids who experience punishment are more likely to develop aggressive behaviors. This one kind of blew my mind. I remember reading it a little while ago. I think I've read it in multiple different parenting books. The American Academy of Paediatrics published a statement indicating that kids who are subjected to harsh disciplinary measures, including physical punishment, so that could be things like hitting, spanking, and things like that, they're more likely to develop aggressive behaviors, emotional issues, and have lower self-esteem over time. Like, this is statistically significant research findings. It's not just like, oh, this group was a little bit more likely to. No, like, this is pretty darn clear in the research. So there you have it. I think those last few points, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to explain a little bit deeper around, obviously this is not just my opinion, this is what the research is showing, and I always like to lean back on that because I want my work to be evidence-based. I want parents to know, with any parenting approach, if you've got to look for what's the research behind supporting this. I hope you found this episode helpful, and I will try to keep you guys updated on the picture down there of my little Poochie Pepper. We'll see if we can kind of, scratch off or clean off some of the ink. If you guys have any ideas on how to do that without taking the paint off of the actual painting I did, please let me know. Just find me on social media and send me a message, or you can email us because you'll find all the links and stuff in the show notes. Because I think half of the reason it's been sitting there for about 2 weeks is because I'm I don't know how to get that off without taking off the paint. There's the blue sky behind her. Green grass doesn't matter because it's green, but then it's all over her black fur. And I'm I don't know what to do with that. So it's in the too hard basket right now. So if you guys have any ideas of how to just get off those 3 fluoro green lines of ink, that would be wonderful. Okay, I will leave it there. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you same time and place next week for not the same episode, that would be weird, for a new episode. And until then, stay safe.